Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to Apply. All right, so today I have Myntillae Nash on the line, and she is a product designer and founder over at Minty Fresh Designs. Myntillae, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you.
All right, so we got a lot to cover today. I'm really excited to have you on and to announce to our audience that you will be an author in one of our upcoming books. So first off, I just like to say congrats.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Yeah, we're going to have some fun. And I also want to get into Minty Fresh Designs. Of course, we're going to talk about your work there and really how you're helping your clients. But just to get this episode started, we'll start this the way that we start them all with our Mission Matters Minute. So Myntillae, we at Mission Matters amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's our mission. Myntillae, what mission matters to you?
Right now, I think the mission that matters to me the most is advocating for mental health in the entrepreneur world or just the business world, along with design, obviously. But I believe in advocating for mental health for people so they can succeed in whatever they want to do.
I love bringing mission-based individuals on the line. And when we were talking and kind of preparing for the interview, and obviously there's the business side of what you do at Minty Fresh Designs, but then there's also goes hand in hand with your beliefs and ethics and philosophy around mental health, the importance of it. And I think it's something that we as entrepreneurs do not talk enough about and does not get an eyeballs or views in the press or media. And so that's why I was excited to get your views on it. And also like your journey and also really just to let other people know out there like that, it's a serious thing. And that as entrepreneurs, we have a lot of pressure on us. We have a lot of other things going on as well. And the more we talk about it, I feel like the more that we all have an opportunity to grow from that information and gain resources. Right. So I guess just to get us kicked off with the overall discussion, maybe tell us a little bit more about your background and really how you got started on this path.
So I started off in graphic design, and I guess the short version maybe of how I got on this path was I initially had been working full time for a tech company that was pretty big out in Utah. And I just remember my body just started to not function the way that I wanted it to function. And at the time, I don't think I fully understood what was going on. With it, it was kind of what started opening my eyes to it, I guess, I think, as I started to understand that I needed to do some work on my mental health or just my own personal growth. And while I was working there, I just remember having a lot of, this was a symptom for me. I was starting to have a lot of chronic pain and just things that were a little inexplicable, I think on the outside, people just thought oh, do you need another chair or something that was, I forget what those chairs are called, but the ergonomic chairs, that's the word I'm trying to think of. Just stuff like that where they think oh, is this what you need? But I just remember feeling there's just something that's off, or this is not helping me grow the way that I personally need to grow or something. It was really hard to explain, I think, at the time, but I just remember, at least in retrospect, I can see it more clearly now, how I just feel like I was reaching some of my limits, and there was also, I think, some unaddressed trauma from my life that hadn't really been looked at, and it was starting to affect how I was showing up at work, or even just feeling like I was reaching my full potential. And I remember at the time, I took a big leap of faith by actually quitting that job and stepping away from it so that I could actually just do what I really wanted to do and focus on my health. At the time, I don't think I realized I was focusing so much on my health, but it actually did tremendous stuff for me to actually just take the leap of faith and start my own business. Because I know at the one job that I had, I think I had reached my limits and potential. I felt like I'd reached the ceiling and the cap of how I could grow there. And I didn't realize how that was actually affecting me mentally and physically and emotionally and all that stuff. And so I think that's why mental health has been such an influence for me and why I'm such an advocate for it, because I just learned so much, I think, about my own self, and have found a lot of healing for myself more than in any other way, just going on my own and starting my own business. And, it
Yeah.
hasn't always been easy. I will definitely attest to that. But like, I'm definitely a lot happier and healthier now than I have been before, or even when I've tried to go back working for other people. I've just been like, no, this is not the healthiest me.
Mhm.
And that's why I think I'm all about helping, encouraging other people. Not that I think everyone needs to be an entrepreneur per se to be like their healthiest self, but at least being aware of who they are and what they need. But that was the start of my journey, at least
So
how I got
I
here. And so
wanna
I feel like a lot I could say about
and thank you for sharing that, seriously. And
it.
I wanna stick in some of those earlier days a little bit longer,
Mhm.
because you quit your job. I mean, I call it the jumping off point. Some people say jumping off the cliff. Some people say, I mean, there's a lot of different terms for it. But if I can
Mhm.
take you back to that moment in time, like what was that like? Had to be kind of scary, huh?
Oh, definitely. Even though I had friends and family, I feel like that were very encouraging, especially some of my relatives are like, oh,
Mm,
you're always busy. Because I basically had what was now my current full time job, or like, self employed now. I was doing that as a side gig for a long
mm,
time until I took the plunge to do it full time. But people always told me, like, you're always so busy with this work and stuff. Like, I feel like you'll just be just fine. But, regardless of what people say, like,
yeah.
I feel like it's still nerve wracking. Like, you don't know what to expect. Like, it's definitely very
Mhm.
different than having someone send you your own, they take care of the paycheck. Like, you just show up at work and then you get it. But
Yeah.
when I think of how I felt in in relation, I'm trying to think of how the best way to word it. Like,
Mhm.
even though I think I was scared to take the plunge, when
Yeah.
I compare that to how I was actually feeling at that job, if I'm honest, I remember
Mhm.
I cried a lot in the bathroom. I
Yeah.
think I was just so unhappy. Like, I'd hide in there in between, like, I'd take breaks and I would
Mm,
just, like, I was having breakdowns all the time because I just knew, I think part of it was I was not happy. My body was physically reacting to it, even though I knew I was skilled at the job that I was at. But I think, I don't know, there was something about feeling limited in what I
mm,
could do or how I could grow there that was holding me back. And
mhm.
at least for me, my body physically reacts to certain stuff when
Yeah.
it's not right for me. And so for me, I was like, okay, either I can keep suffering like this if I want to keep crying in the bathroom, or if I keep wanting to have this chronic pain, then fine, I can stay here, or I can take the plunge.
Mm,
And so I had to work through that fear a little bit because I was like, I didn't know what to expect or how
mhm.
it was going to help me. But overall, like, it was a very positive thing. And I'm
Yeah.
much happier doing my own thing than I ever was working for someone else. And I will admit, too, I did try going back at one point in time working for someone else full
Mhm.
time. And that was even worse, I think, than, than the first one, if I'm honest.
Hold on,
Like,
so you did
well,
learn the first time that it wasn't for you. You went back. Hey, I give
well,
you credit.
yeah. I think there was a part because I was just like, I was struggling with a lot of stuff in my personal life. And I thought, just like,
Yeah.
okay, maybe if I go back here, it'll help alleviate some of this. But it actually ended up being a very toxic environment for me, and actually did the opposite effect, I think, from what I was hoping for. And so even through that experience, I
Mm,
also became, I think, even more of a mental health advocate, because I'm like, for people to thrive in their jobs and enjoy what they're doing, I feel like we need healthy environments. We need to
mm,
care a lot about how other people are doing, I think, in our jobs. And if we're
mm,
facilitating environments that are conducive to people, I think thriving is the best word
mm.
I can think of. And
Yeah.
when we're not helping create that, I think, for other people, I think we do a detriment to our own businesses and our own selves and for other people. And I think
Yeah.
that's why I care about it so much and want to talk about it more, because I think regardless of what field or industry that you work in, I think it impacts all of us more than we want to realize. And I hear a lot of stories, like, it doesn't matter if you're in the same field as me or a
Mm,
completely different field. I think we influence our professional circle, even our personal circle,
mhm.
more than we realize. And if we have this negative, toxic environment, or just not aware of other people's well-being, like I think over time we start to see negative effects in our businesses, and it shows eventually over time. It might not be super apparent in the very beginning, but I think over time it does affect a lot of things, or you start to lose good people who you work with, or I don't know. There's a lot of things I could talk about with that, but I think that's why I care about it so much, because I think a lot of us would thrive more in our businesses or have more success if we prioritize this more in our life, or we're just like more aware of how we were influencing other people. And just, I mean, our jobs are such a huge portion, I think, of our day-to-day lives. And sometimes we ignore it and think like, oh, we'll just get over it, or like, doesn't matter. But I think at the end of the day, you know, when we're spending probably half our time like at work, like every day, it's a big deal, and it does affect our health. And when we don't care about it, I think we see detrimental effects over time. That may not be super apparent in the beginning.
Did you in the beginning? So did you what was your process like? Did you give yourself maybe room to breathe, room to heal, like as you kind of made that transition? Like what was your transition like of healing?
I think, to be fair, I think it took several years to kind of work through that, if I'm honest, and probably even more so in the last 5 years or so, because I've been doing this, I think, full time for at least 10 years now. And so in the very beginning, I don't think I really had a full grasp on what I was doing in terms of my healing process, if that makes sense. Like I kind of just took the plunge, and I was like, I'll kind of just like figure this out.
Especially as you're going through it, like, and like it's hard. Yeah.
But I would say definitely during the last 5 years or so is when I think I took that more seriously. Like I allowed myself to take breaks or just rest. And I know that might seem a little crazy when I think we work in this environment, or we have this culture, at least, especially here in America, I think, where we're supposed to just grind. And that can be really taxing on us sometimes. And it's hard when we have a lot of responsibilities and obligations. But I had to learn at some point, I think through some hard lessons, if I'm honest, that I needed to rest or allow myself a little bit more flexibility. Because I will admit that I was a workaholic for very many years, and it took some hard lessons, I think, in my life to realize we don't have to be workaholics all the time, like to be successful. And that was one thing that I did learn about myself, because I just thought like, oh, you have to just basically kill yourself like to be successful. And I learned that that's not true, because I've actually been more successful once I allowed myself more balance in my life and actually resting so that I actually function better. Because I think I was able to just like, well, quote unquote, do all the things right until a certain point where my body was like, you can't keep doing things like that. Like I was able to do it for so long until I reached my cap, I think. And then I just kind of like collapsed a little bit. And then I was forced to, I was forced in the sense, like you have a choice now mentally if you want to change things, that you can be a more functional entrepreneur or person, or whatever you want to label it, or you can just keep doing what you're doing but probably not see as much success. And once I started allowing that as more of my schedule, or just paying more attention to my body, like, okay, I'm feeling a little overworked right now, I need to just take a break. Or if I just need like a half-hour nap in the middle of my day, whatever, to keep going, it's okay. And I've actually, and that sounds funny to say, but like the more I've allowed myself to do that, I've actually experienced more success and more thriving personally and as a business owner. So I'm like,
for sure. And I don't,
okay, like.
And I don't think it sounds silly at all. I think that for a lot of people out there, like they're going to get solace out of your words and understand that like they shouldn't beat themselves up if they need to take a little bit of time off or do some other things. Like we all have goals. We all have these things that we want to do, of course, whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you're an executive or working corporate, or like, it doesn't matter. Like we all have goals and wants and hopes and dreams, right? Like ideally. And if your body, or if you need some type of break, or you're missing something, like like it did in your case, show up in something outwardly in the terms of like your body lets you know through pain. For other people, it might show up in something that maybe isn't like quite as obvious, like physical pain, or maybe it's depression. Maybe there's a bunch of different things and ways that different people's bodies will react and let them know, hey, I'm not necessarily getting what I need. So not asking you to, be the doctor or prescribe anything like that. But if you were to give some tips based on just your success and what was helpful to you, for some of those entrepreneurs out there that may be going through similar things where they're thinking about like, their body, or just in general, they're not feeling right. What kind of things helped you that maybe they could take away from that as well?
Some of them are kind of like what you said. I think if you start feeling really depressed, or just a lot of physical and possibly mental exhaustion, I think that's a sign of reaching our limits and our capacity. I know I had suffered at one point in time from brain fog, and I think that was coupled with just a lot of exhaustion too. And I'll admit, when I had reached that point, I was like, I have never experienced these symptoms before. Like, I usually remember everything. And I think that's also a symptom of just extreme stress. So I feel like if you're going under a lot of stress, I think honestly that leads to exhaustion and probably depression and other things. Or there is such a thing, I know it's called stress-induced depression as well, which I think a lot of those are kind of the signs of that. So if you're aware of that, and just take a break. I think a lot of it just is allowing yourself permission to take a break. And this is more than, I think our society likes to say, like, oh, just go on a vacation, whatever. Like sometimes it might be more than that. Like a vacation might be the gateway maybe to allowing yourself the rest that you need. But I think sometimes it's okay to step away. And that was a hard lesson for me to learn. Like, not step away permanently. I'll clarify that. But like, maybe you just need like a few days off, or like a week off to reset or something. And that might be important, like for the long haul or the grand scheme of things. And for me, that was really hard for me to actually acknowledge or even be okay with for several years, because I just always thought, like, I have these responsibilities to other people and my clients, and they're all really important to me. But I'll be honest, I'm now at a point where the people in my circle, especially my professional circle, I would say, are all advocates, I think, of me and my health. And so it is a little bit easier to say, like, okay, I'm not doing well right now. Like, give me a couple of days, like to reset or whatever it is that I need. Or maybe I don't respond, like, or I say, like, I need a break. I might not be as responsive right now for the next little while. I need a reset for myself. But then I'll be more functional, and I know that I'll function better and be able to produce better products and designs and stuff like that for people. And I think that's true for everyone in any industry. I think it's just it's a cultural problem in our work culture here in America. Like, we think we're just supposed to keep working, and there's, this what do we call it? I guess the grind is what I always hear, and I just think, like, why do we believe so much in this? I don't know. For me, I think I have a hard time with that belief, because I'm just kind of like, well, we can keep grinding till we stop functioning. And there is a point where I think you do need to do that, maybe in the beginning when you're starting off a business or something. But I don't think it always needs to be like that, is my opinion, because I think we're human, we're not robots. And we have to take care of ourselves too. And if we don't take care of ourselves, then I think we have a hard time taking care of our clients or our customers, or just whoever we're working with in our business. Like, I think we have our limits, and in our society, we just don't really accept that a whole lot, like taking care of ourselves. But I personally believe that if we take care of ourselves, we will thrive more and find more success. And I've definitely seen that in my own business as I, allowed myself to actually care more about my well-being. Then I started seeing a ton of growth, like whether in sales or numbers or just like all sorts of stuff in my business. I'm like, oh, this actually does work. Like you don't have to you don't have to kill yourself to find success. So
and
that's
I
why I
think,
want to tell other people that. Like, I think we forget that or just don't believe it for whatever reason.
yeah. And I think one of the interesting things as I've gotten to know you better is that you take this same passion for mental health and really the amount of empathy that you've been able to build up and cultivate, whether it was natural, you had it always, or if this kind of like, it just makes you more in tune with what's going around you during your profession and what you're doing over at Minty Fresh. I mean, UX, UI design, branding, development, like how does your some of this experience you've had translate into creating really what you're doing for your clients, which is phenomenal user experiences?
So as you mentioned, empathy is a key skill or something that you need to have as a UX designer. And I think for some people that's probably, or when I say some people, some designers, that's probably a developed skill over time. I think I've been blessed in a weird way my whole life of having empathy for people in general. And so that applies really well to what I do, because the reason that you need empathy in user experience design is the whole purpose is to understand the user better and what their needs are, and being a huge advocate for them, because you're working, or at least when I say you're working, I'm working with like developers and stakeholders or marketing teams or whatever it is, people who are influenced in this process, like whether it's for product design, like software application design or web design or whatever. Other people who are, maybe that's not their strong suit or what their role is dedicated to, that's where I come into play, where it helps me advocate for the user, because sometimes that's missing in the middle for people. And so the fact that I've developed the skill of empathy, especially through just my own personal experiences, I think it just translates into me just caring so much about users and what will create a good experience for them. Like, and it goes down to even just like super minor detail with what I do. But I think it's been super helpful, and maybe that's just naturally why I ended up in this career. I don't know, just because I had the natural skill set for it or something, because empathy, I'm realizing, is not something that everyone has, and I'm not downplaying that, but it is crucial for what I do in creating designs. And it's not just about pretty designs. Like, yes, I like all that stuff. I like things to look pretty, I'm not gonna lie, but I'm actually having it functional and speak to users and be something that will be memorable for people, I think is something really important and valuable to me. And because empathy is such a big thing in my life, it's so applicable to what I do. And I think it just adds a lot more value to what I do naturally, because I just understand users in a unique way. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I think because I've spent my whole life just empathizing towards other people and just caring about their needs or understanding where they're coming from, it's easy for me to step in if I'm like with developers or stakeholders or whatever, just to say like, hey, I think we've forgotten about this thing, or you guys haven't thought about this for your users. So let's take a step back and like think about that for a moment. So that's where that comes into play for what I do on a daily basis.
Yeah. And I feel like there are many times the UX or the UI design, like that aspect of it. Okay. So the development side, the engineers, like some of the other things they may, the concept overall that may get a lot of the attention at first, but sometimes when we get to the design piece of it, sometimes people are stuck on the, does it look good? And that's the main component. But when you talk about functionality, or when you talk about the user experience, like if you get the user experience right, that does translate into hitting goals, like whether it's lead gen, revenue, whether it's distributing documents, whether it's keeping somebody in your site longer, whether it's allowing the information to be more accessible. And I'm just naming a couple of them. I'm sure you could rattle off way more than I could, but with my limited knowledge of UX, don't leave me hanging, Myntillae. Myntillae, I can't do all of that one by myself.
It's okay.
Tell us a little bit more about the UX UI side of things, and for those and for people watching this, and why it's so important important to create that user experience?
Well, the thing that's immediately coming to my mind right now as you were talking is I would just say this. If you've spent all this money on creating software like an application or even a website, because some websites can be very complex, or even if they're not as complex, they're still just as important. But I was going to say, if it's not serving a purpose, or well, actually, the better way to word it is if your users
You're so kind. Look at that. You're even having empathy for everybody out there that's made this mistake and that's cringing. Like this is, you're demonstrating your empathy right now. You're not going to insult me. Yes, I've made this mistake. Go ahead.
Yes. Well, I was going to say, if your users are coming to use your product, like whether it's software, app, or a website, or really, there's a multitude of different things that could be. Those are the primary ones that I'm usually doing UX for. If your users are coming and they're super frustrated when they're using your product, or they can't do what they want, or it's, they just leave it and say like, I don't even know how to use this, or I can't even do what I want, then you've really just wasted a bunch of money. And most of the time it's like, we're not going to get everything perfect, I would admit, as UX designer, but we try our best because we try to do research and keep them in mind or ask enough questions. And that's a sign of a good team that is implementing all those things and actually trying to involve the user in choices. But when we leave that out, you could spend all this money or just have developer. I've been down that road where I've been brought into projects where they've only had a developer working on stuff, and developers just have a different way of thinking. That's the only way I'd say. They don't have the same skill set as a UX designer, and that's why it's crucial to kind of bring them into that, because a developer is going to think one way. And I would also say stakeholders also think another way, because they're the ones investing the money into something, or this is their idea. And sometimes they can also get caught up in their ideas because they're the ones paying for it and just kind of leave it out. But if you're creating this thing where people are like, I can't even use this, or I can't even do what I want, and not that everything has to be 100% perfect in it, but if you've created a good product that's easy for people to use and they can accomplish the main tasks that they need to do in there, or purposes, then that's good. But if you've done the complete opposite, why have you even done it? I've seen a lot of people make mistakes or invest a lot of money in stuff like that and not involving the right people, or leaving out crucial steps, even involving feedback from users and stuff like that. And thinking, that's another mistake I will point out to people, is sometimes we think we know everything, or that we know or assume that we know what users want, and that's not always true. I would say probably half the time we're probably wrong, or sometimes we do get it right, sometimes we don't. But when we're just making these assumptions, we can create bad products that aren't working for us. And it's why even spend the money on something if you're not going to involve people who are the experts to create something to help create, whether you want more leads or sales, or if you just want to solve a problem for people. Are you actually solving the problem, or do you just have a good idea in your head for how to solve the problem? And I think there's a difference between having the idea and actually implementing it successfully and going through the user experience process. And it's a team thing. I'm not saying I'm better and smarter than a stakeholder or developers. It's a team effort on all fronts, to create a good product together, because you have to collaborate for sure. No one is better than one other person when it comes to this. But so there's a lot of benefits. I think if you forget a lot of that, then at the end of the day, if you create a really frustrating app that no one can use, then you haven't accomplished anything good for your business, or you're not going to achieve success. That's all I would say in its simplicity at the end of the day.
Well said. Well, I want to spend a little bit of time here. And for everybody watching this, we're not going to spend too much time on this, because we will be bringing Myntillae back onto the show for a second part of this interview, which is a 2-part interview. When the next time we bring Myntillae onto the show, it'll be about the book that we're launching. But just to give a little bit of a preview, what are some of the things that you plan to propose in the upcoming book launch?
It's similar to some of the stuff that I've mentioned, just going a little through my own personal story of my mental health journey and how that came to be as an entrepreneur. More details, obviously, than what I gave today. But also, I think just my applicable advice as to what entrepreneurs can do to just prioritize their well-being so that they are more successful as entrepreneurs. Because I think, I could spend all day talking about design. Like, I know a lot about that stuff, but I think the empathy side of me wants to speak more on how can we apply some of that stuff as well into our lives so that we're successful entrepreneurs. And I think helping advocate for everyone, because I feel like if I have good well-being, if my clients have good health and well-being, then we'll all be successful together and we can do more together more than me just like shoving design down your throat and saying, this is why you need a good designer. Like, I can tie that all in together and say, you've heard parts of that, like how my personal journey has influenced my choices in my career or what I do as a designer. And I think that's great too, but I'll be, I think, sharing more my advice of how we can be better entrepreneurs and, not forgetting that puzzle piece in our life, because I think our businesses are more than just about the money. Like, obviously, money is important. Money, if we didn't have money, then we wouldn't have businesses, right? Yeah. But I think if we do that stuff and we will have more money or whatever success is for every entrepreneur, whatever success is for you, I think we can have more of that if we prioritize our well-being. So I'll give my more specifics as to what I think people can do to find that.
And I'll cut you off there because we can't give too much because we got to sell some books still. All right. So, but that being said, and we're obviously going to bring you back on the show and we'll do a deep dive into the book once it's live. That being said, first off, it has been great having you on the show.
Thank you.
What's next? I mean, what's next for you? What's next for Minty Fresh? What's next?
Oh, I'm trying to figure out how to recap it, but I've had a lot of really cool offers for growth this year. So a lot of really amazing clients I've been working with and hopefully some more. But yeah, I think Minty Fresh Designs will definitely be growing in 2023. So I'm excited to see where that takes me and a lot of big decisions I think to make. But yeah, I'm excited for where this is going. It's first time in a long time that I'm like, yay, I'm excited to see where this goes.
That's exciting. That is good. And if somebody's watching this and they want to learn more about Minty Fresh Designs, what's the best way for them to?
You can go to my website. It's Minty Fresh Designs, but spelled like my name. So MYNTI and then Fresh Designs with an S.com. That's the easiest way because I have a lot of information on there that goes through my process and my services and how to contact me. But I guess if you also prefer, you can go to my business page on Instagram as well. It's just Minty Fresh Designs on there. Same spelling, and I'm on LinkedIn as well. I don't remember the URL for that, but if you search for Minty Fresh Designs on there as well. So I should know that URL. That's embarrassing.
All good. No, it's all good. And we're going to put all of that information in the show notes anyway, so that our audience can just click on the links and head right on over. So don't worry about that. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters or listening to an episode or tuning in, we're all about bringing on business owners, entrepreneurs, experts, and executives and having them share their background, their mission, their businesses, and why they do what they do. Like, what motivates them? What's their mission in life? If that's the type of content that sounds interesting or fun or exciting to you, hit that subscribe button because we have many more mission-based individuals coming up on the line, and we don't want you to miss a thing. Myntillae, it has been awesome having you back on the show or having you on the show. I can't wait to have you back on the show to do the follow-up interview. So thank you again and wishing you so much success in 2023.
Awesome. Thank you so much.